I thank you for being here. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, and thank you for all the wonderful material you have sent for such a long time. It's more than appreciated, and it has helped people around the world, I think, understand reality and get a better grip on this insane asylum that our planet has turned into. You also have an eclectic ability to pull stories that are off the beaten path and are very unusual and always fun to read and interesting. So well done.
Thank you, Jeff. It's been an honor.
Yeah. Okay, now your background covers many areas that aren't exactly front page news. You have written about dying and what happens to us, what we're here for, near-death experiences, which really seem to be one of the most remarkable experiences that still living people can report about. And if any of you read much about so-called NDEs, you'll understand that they are mind-boggling. Some come from people who have been involved in serious disease for a long time, almost dying. Others are involved in violent acts of criminality, being shot in the operating room. Some are in automobile accidents, and so forth. But NDEs, near-death experiences, really, to me, Soren, almost qualify to be called after-death experiences. I see it the other way.
Yeah, and I actually agree with you, Jeff, because what fascinated me when I started out on examining what is going on in the process of what we call dying, near-death experience actually goes cross-culture. And science sure couldn't provide me with an answer. It's all about chemistry, right?
Sure.
But according to them, and it probably is a big rush of endorphins. But what is very interesting is that people all over the world see the same thing. They report of the light, they report of the tunnel, warmth, feeling safe. And coming back, they have a profound change in actually both mundane and spiritual perspective. But what I really think is cool is that so-called atheists, people who don't believe in anything after this life, and they're welcome to do that, also have spiritual epiphany. And that's quite interesting. I read a story in the early 80s about a high-profile CEO on Volvo who had an accident, and he had a near-death experience. I think it was in Spain, and he described himself as a very cold person. He didn't connect to this world very much emotionally. And after that, he gave up his job and started giving seminars around the world in how to treat each other right. And there is a meaning, there's a point to all this.
That's fascinating. It's the idea that people who go through these, I would call them after-death experiences, have changed, sometimes dramatically, like the man you just described. They don't see things the same. The change isn't necessarily instant. It can take weeks or months to fully manifest. But somehow this experience, in many cases, does redirect people on their pathway through life. It's very, very interesting what goes on.
Yeah, it is also because we talk a lot, Jeff, about in the spiritual movement, if I may label it that way, we talk a lot about getting rid of the ego and connecting to the soul. But it seems that the NDEs, they trigger actually what's behind the soul, the spirit, the connection with whatever God force people may believe in. And there's certainly, in my point of view,
whatever God force, I agree, yes.
Yeah. Because it's not, but what really triggers me, it's the same as I read a story on children in Africa, of children in the Australian bush who were told to draw a painting of an angel, right? And that also went cross-culture. They basically draw the same painting. And when something it goes cross-culture and it's out in territories where the mainstream media doesn't have access, it's really interesting because it's a field. It seems to be a field that we connect to, and it obviously has a very profound impact on the person who experiences it, and that's why I set out to sort of find out what's really going on here. I studied at that point, I think, a valid source. It's called the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and it actually also mentions near-death experiences, but in a kind of different way. It says when you leave your body, stay in the first light, and I think it's that light people see that the Tibetan Book of the Dead actually refers to, because there is something also going on after the near-death experience, which haven't been explored that much, because that's where they sort of stop. They have this near-death experience, but it's still near death. It's not death, and I think the Tibetan Book of the Dead mentioning the first light, it must refer to that experience that many people have in modern society. It's a very old book, right? And it also goes with, the Tibetan book, they're Buddhist, right? They don't want to be in the afterlife that for too long. They say actually 21 days, and then you have to come back to this life.
Really?
Yeah, in order not to stray, in order not to get seduced by, the heavenly fears, or what we refer to call it. I actually like that expression. But, and that should be one of the reasons why, there's a cool mentioning, this cool story in the Tibetan Book of the Dead. This brother, he dies in the monastery, right? And they sit with their balls and they chant in order to keep the soul near the monastery, in order for them not to come back to a life maybe in a big city.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So they don't stray from the spiritual path they're on, and they see, they see reincarnation a bit different than mainstream New Age, and I really like that. That they sort of differ, because they see it as a wheel on a bicycle. Has a lot of these things. I don't know the word for them, but
spokes.
Spokes, and they say, well, when we're done with that, we're free. We're free, and that also triggered, my perception of what is going on here, what is dying, because at that time I was working, it was in the early 80s, I was working at removing unwanted spirits from people's houses. I never do that again, it's so scary. But
that's almost like exorcism of an inanimate object, pulling spirits out of houses. You run a risk when you do that.
Yes, I would never ever touch that again, but I think it was something I need to go through, because, I am brought up in a Christian society, not by a Christian family, but as a young man, I was actually very, very religious on my own, so to speak, and I couldn't make it fit. I thought, well, if heaven is that cool and we all go there, why are all these ghosts haunting people, these spirits? And so I later found out that heaven is like the Italian bureaucracy. There is a meaning to it, but
funny.
But
heaven is like the Italian bureaucracy. Very good.
Yeah,
I think they've had about 100 governments since World War II, haven't they? Something like this. Way up there.
Yeah, it's a mess, but there's some kind of order to it, hopefully.
Yeah.
And that actually it was a Catholic priest who wrote that in an article. But it didn't fit with what Christianity sort of had to offer, because the mysticism of dying is to my knowledge not that clear in Christianity, or either than we either go to heaven or hell, right? And so I needed to understand what is behind the near-death experience, right? What comes after? And I found it extremely interesting.
Well, the part that you mentioned that is really fascinating are the cross-culture similarities. of NDEs. Now, I don't know anyone who has written a book about this or studied it, perhaps as much as you. What do you know about cross-culture similarities of the NDE itself? What kinds of things happen? You mentioned the light is seen by people. It doesn't matter what country, where they are. If they have an NDE, they do see the light. Is that one?
That is one. They kind of vary a little, but they also do within a given society, if we talk about the Western society, right?
Uh-huh.
And I think there was an author also, I don't remember if he was present in the late 70s, but early 80s, called Raymond A. Moody, who did a lot of...
He was on, I've had him on the program, yeah.
Yeah, and he did a lot of cool research, but it seems like even in the same culture, it can differ a bit, but yeah, basically, we probably can make a list of sort of 8 things that people see. They see the light, they feel safe, they feel some kind of heavenly bliss. They can see spirits. That's why I mentioned spirits, like the angelic realm, you would say in Christianity. They would meet a very kind person that they trust. That could be grandmother. Some claim to see Jesus. But they see sort of relatives, long gone relatives. Some hear celestial music. Some are bathed in forgiveness and bliss, and I find that very interesting, obviously, but also children coming back, children coming back from near-death experiences. Mm-hmm. I once got a call to go to the ICU in a hospital in Denmark with a 15-year-old girl. Mm-hmm. My wife knew, and she was also torn up in a car accident, and she had a near-death experience, and she told me, and this was actually in the late 70s. She told me, I met this person. She said to me, she was in her hospital bed, and she was not religious, but she started to talk about she mentioned Jesus, right? Mm-hmm. And he said, well, this is it. He said, you are, he sort of calmed her, and she said, oh, I don't want to go now because I'm not finished dancing. I so much love dancing. And she was sent back, and I thought that was pretty cool. And actually, a lot of people, they seem to also could, not bargain, but say that there are 2 ways in this, because some are told it's not your time yet, you have to go back, and they go, oh, because they really like that celestial ambience, that celestial experience, right? Who wants to come back from that? So they go reluctantly back to this life. Some go back to this life with a meaning of purpose, and some seem to say, well, I hope it's not my time yet, because I so much love being here, I so much love doing what I'm doing. And they actually get sent back, if I can use that expression. And that just goes to show, that when I learned about this, Jeff, I thought, well, where's the judgment here we are hammered with? Where are the lifted finger? Where is the very strict God? It's all about sort of, to me, obviously cooperation at a very high level, at a very high frequency, mm-hmm. but also this understanding of. And I think we walk around this earth and think, well, our life is written in stone, and someday we will have to depart on that given day. It rocked my belief system into those perimeters, because this is not a prison camp. This is not an institution for people with a bad karma, as some would say. Mm-hmm. I think we come here because no matter who we are, actually, we have a job. You have a great job, Jeff. You make a huge impact in this world, I think. And we also have, what I like to call the more silent existences, who goes to work, raise their kids. And that's a huge job. You bet it is.
Oh, yeah. Being a proper parent, an effective parent, a communicator in this world with young people, maybe the toughest job of all.
Yeah, and it goes, and I'm not using this as a cliche, Jeff, but every life is equally important.
Yeah.
And every soul on this earth gets this. I think it's obviously something I cannot prove, but I think every person on this planet gets these NDEs, and there are no person that are not cut out for the celestial, and that really corresponds with my spirit, because that kind of specialness we see, especially in the New Age movement, is the same as we see in the mainstream newspapers. It's ridiculous. They say we're all one and we're all love, and then that's okay to say that, but please
no,
don't.
They missed the point entirely, I think.
Yeah, and please don't be special when you say those words, right?
Yeah.
Because then we're not all one. We're not all connected, and of course we are. Of course we are connected. So there is this field somewhere. My friend, the late Stuart Wilde, said it was 40 degrees left of our foreheads. I still think of it. I still think of it as up there. When he referred to heaven. He said it isn't that far away. It's about 40 centimeters from the left. From the left of the forehead.
Really? No, I didn't know this. That's fascinating.
Yeah. That's the way he perceived it. But I think, these perceptions of the celestial, they're very subjective, but I also think they're very objective, because if you have one, Jeff, and I know you, I think you have, an idea of what the celestial is. I think that idea is correct, and if I have an idea of what the celestial is, I also actually think that is correct, because we are not going into, as some writers out there seem to advocate now, we're not going into a new matrix. Mm-hmm. We're going not into a new guidance system, not going into a new power trip, and we have this, and I also find this very fascinating. We say, when we go about our day, we all make our own reality, right? We actually know, we can carry one thing with us, and that's the consciousness. That's all we have to take away from here, and that's all we can go with. Mm-hmm. And if we say in life, we make up our own reality every day as we go along, I actually also think that goes for the afterlife. But why should that disappear from the consciousness? So, if righteous Muslim thinks that when he has a good life according to Islam, he'll sit next to Allah, he'll probably experience that. When with a very hardcore Christian thinks, if I go through these strict commands in my life, mm-hmm. I'll probably sit next to Jesus in the afterlife. That's what he will experience. And if a Buddhist, to me, Buddhism isn't a religion; it's a philosophy. But
it's a belief system, I think.
Yeah. And if they think, I'll experience total freedom, they'll experience that. And I think that comes after the near-death experience. That comes after, where we sort of go into an illusion, a little matrix that we have to dissolve. And it's all also programming when I talk of Islam, when I talk of Christianity. And we have to get rid of that programming. And I think that's why people have invented hell also, because we have to put our sort of belief system into a mundane construct in order to understand the afterlife. And I don't think that always cut it. I had an email the other day. I thought it was quite funny. They said, "Do dead people pay taxes?" I sure hope not, because they would live in a house in the afterlife and so on. And that's
it was a serious email.
Yeah, but it actually made sense, because some people claim that. Some people claim that when we go into the afterlife, or the realm after the afterlife, we sort of can have a little house with a garden. Actually, people have reported that and wrote about it. I don't know whether to trust it, right? Actually, I don't think it is so. But if it's their reality, it's their reality. So there's a lot of interpretation, and
that is a funny email.
Yeah,
I never thought of such, and I think we do probably predispose ourselves toward at least experiencing a portion of what we expect, if not a lot of it, and that's what you're talking about. We do predispose ourselves toward an expectation. But back to the NDE issue and the light and the feeling of bliss and absolute safety and protection, and completely cut away from any ego or mundane kind of concern with day-to-day reality, with day-to-day troubles. It is absolute liberation from everything that can cause someone grief, duress, angst, anguish, stress.